everybody. I'm Lizabeth Cohen. I'm interim dean at the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study, and I am delighted to welcome you to the exciting symposium that awaits us today. I am thrilled that this event is taking place on my watch. Remember, I said I'm interim. I am an urban historian of the 20th century United States who has written books about Chicago during the 1920s and 1930s and the metropolitan New York area in the post-World War II period. I am now writing a book entitled Saving America's Cities, Ed Logue and the Struggle to Renew Urban America in the Suburban Age. As some of you may know, Ed Logue, the powerful director of the Boston Redevelopment Authority during the 1960s, was a controversial figure who was instrumental in launching the New Boston, aimed at reversing years of urban decline. I use Logue to follow the evolution of post-war efforts to revitalize American cities as he moved from New Haven in the 1950s to Boston in the 1960s and on to New York City and New York State in the 1970s and 1980s. Boston proves key to Logue's and to my story. As I probe the strengths and weaknesses of different approaches to urban renewal in the post-war period, I have become deeply aware of their relevance to urban redevelopment today, particularly in the case of Boston. I know that the urban built environment is not our focus today, but I share my personal story to explain why this symposium means so much to me, sitting as I do at my own intersection of universities and cities, of Harvard and Boston, and of historical scholarship and current public policy. I am also very gratified to see the attention that this symposium and the Radcliffe Institute's larger research initiative is giving to Boston, a city underrepresented in the canon of urban history and urban studies. I have often wondered about this during my 14 years at Harvard, coming as I did from academic positions in Pittsburgh and New York. Was there so little modern history of Boston because historians assume the city's importance ended after the colonial era and the American Revolution? Or at the very latest, with abolitionism and transcendentalism? Did Boston's importance as an historical subject recede with its economic decline in the 20th century? Whatever the reason, I am looking forward to watching the social scientists and policymakers gathered here today put Boston at the center of larger urban analysis. In true Radcliffe Institute fashion, Reimagining the City-University Connection convenes faculty from 7 schools at Harvard, 6 universities in the Boston area and others across the country, and public officials working in many departments of the city of Boston. We are also joined by panelists and audience members who are Radcliffe Institute Fellows, here for the year to advance their own research projects, and by Radcliffe Professor Nancy Hill. I am proud that the Radcliffe Institute is hosting this conversation between a great university and a great city about some of the most important problems facing urban America today. And I am pleased that this discussion is not taking place behind closed doors or in ivory towers, but in the company of citizens like you who are so central to making our democracy work. Although we are sitting within the walls of the Radcliffe Institute, I want to remind you that our program today would not have been possible without the collaboration of the Rappaport Institute for Greater Boston at the Kennedy School of Government and our friends in the city of Boston. I would like to take a moment to thank those people whose efforts have made this event possible. Many thanks to the Symposium Planning Committee, Nigel Jacob, Linda Kowalski, Alvaro Lima, David Luberoff, Dan O'Brien, Rob Sampson, and Christopher Winship. Thank you to all of our speakers, whether you have come from across the country, across the river, or just across the campus. Thanks also to everyone who is hosting a lunch table discussion, which is an innovation for us, and to those displaying exhibits and demonstrations later today. I want to reiterate our appreciation to the Rappaport Institute, our Harvard collaborator, and note how delighted I am to see Jerry Rappaport in the audience today For those of you who don't know him, Jerry has been a long-time promoter of stronger connections between local universities, including Harvard and Boston. And as always, deep thanks to Institute staff in our Academic Ventures program and Academic Events Management, led by Rebecca Wasserman and Phyllis Strimling, who have worked so hard to make today's program happen. I would now like to introduce Robert Sampson, who is the director of the Social Science Program at the Radcliffe Institute, and who has been instrumental in shaping today's symposium. Rob is the Henry Ford II Professor of the Social Sciences at Harvard's University Faculty of Arts and Sciences, when he's not planning symposia. It's all yours, Rob.
Thanks, Liz. Welcome, everyone. My name is Rob Sampson. I'm the director of the Social Sciences Program here at Radcliffe, and also my spare time professor of sociology at Harvard. Now, what I want to do today is just give you a very brief overview of the day before turning it over to two more speakers before we get to the panel. And I also want to describe a little bit why we're doing this and what the idea is behind the program. It stems out of thinking that's been going on for a while, and particularly a group of us here at Radcliffe and also the Harvard-Boston Research Initiative, which involves a number of people, and especially I'd like to acknowledge my co-director, Chris Winship, also a professor in sociology. When we began planning the symposium last spring, we thought it would be terrific if 50 or 75 people were interested in this topic. Well, something like 400 people have registered, and we have a packed house here this morning. So clearly, we tapped a deep interest and perhaps even a hunger among many people to delve deeper into the question that we're posing. And the diversity of attendance here is quite astonishing. You may not know it from looking around, but pretty much every university in the greater Boston area is represented. There are people from foundations, nonprofit organizations, students, citizens, you name it. We welcome you all. Now, our goal, admittedly ambitious, is to overcome the perceived barriers that have often contributed to a separation of academic research and universities from local communities they call home. This divide takes many forms. You've probably heard some of these: applied versus basic research, parochial versus general knowledge, or even town versus gown. And oftentimes the applied is seen as somehow secondary. We disagree. These divides are real, but we are trying to advance the simple but powerful idea that important social problems and deep intellectual questions can be addressed in ways right here in Boston that provide new knowledge. And a key part of this is the interaction with city officials, agencies, and those working on the ground. In fact, our claim is that the best knowledge requires that basic researchers learn from those in practice. How schools are organized, for example, or how the police work, if we really want to understand the etiology of violence. What could be more important than educating our children or creating safe cities? And in turn, we believe that practitioners and city researchers, those in government, can learn from interactions with researchers who may look at their data with fresh eyes, independent insights, and have conversations that go back and forth. So we're really about a two-way street, not academics pronouncing findings or having policymakers read things independent of that interaction. So we're trying to create a new kind of understanding of how universities interact with the cities in which they might be better off mutually. Foremost, we believe that universities are in the business of providing new knowledge, but that this need not be in conflict with the local environment. Moreover, we believe that Boston presents a set of missed opportunities. There is research going on, but as Liz noted, Boston could use a lot more. And that's really our goal here today, is to take it to the next level and to create a citywide, regional-wide conversation that enhances this kind of thinking. So with that in mind, we have a distinct logic for the day. And we've thought very carefully about this, and it's laid out in 4 panels, and you can read these in your program. We're going to start with preventing and responding to violence, followed by governance and new technologies. We'll have a break for lunch, and we're sorry if not everyone could get at a lunch roundtable, but that's only because of the demand. We have 9 different roundtables, 100 people signed up, but we do give you lunch. Please come back after that for the urban education session, followed by an overall sort of bird's eye view of how this kind of initiative might work from several different perspectives. And following that, we will say a little bit about next steps. That is to say, today is about starting a conversation, but we believe that there is a road forward, and we will announce specific mechanisms for how this kind of interaction between the city and the university might go forward. And finally, we will reward you with a lovely reception, wine and cheese, but also a number of demonstrations. And I really encourage you, maybe over lunch when you get a chance, to look at some current projects. We have something like 11 displays, 7 posters, and 4 web demonstrations of new software and programs. It's really quite fascinating. And during that time, the provost of Harvard, Alan Garber, will say a few words as well. So we encourage you to stick around. If you can't, come back at the end of the day. And we look forward to an exciting day of conversation. So with that, I'm pleased to turn it over to David Ellwood, who is the Dean of the Harvard Kennedy School of Government.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Liz, and thanks to all of you for being here. It's funny, when Liz was talking about her introduction in her introduction, why she cared about all these things and so forth, something I hadn't even planned to say, but my dissertation was all about cities. It was called The Mismatch Hypotheses. Are there teenage jobs missing in the ghetto? Now, I will admit it was about Chicago. And it should have been about Boston. And of course, some of it had to do with, I had data from Chicago, I admit. Nonetheless, it was done here as a PhD student, and it's the kind of thing that now we need to be doing even more at Boston Light. You know, I don't know how you all are feeling these days, but in my world, a lot of people don't quite know whether to get up, when the alarm goes off in the morning, whether to get up gleefully or hide under the covers. I think hiding under the covers is the more common sense these days as we look and see our inability to seemingly accomplish even the most basic parts of governing in Washington, as we find an economy that seems stalled and struggling to move forward. And the like. At the same time, we see people that are literally willing to put their lives on the line in North Africa and others for more democratic governance. And we have a real set of challenges. Where does hope lie? I think it's just about impossible not to look around and say many of the most exciting things that are happening in cities. And we've heard from Ed Glazer and many others about why that is. But as I think about this relationship, it seems to me that it's, and what I've learned about it, there are at least 3 domains where we can make a difference. But I wanted to say that, how did I learn about this? Besides the fact that I did a dissertation and, like all economists, was deeply involved, young economist, was deeply involved in the institutions, and I really got to know the mayor and other people in Chicago and know that's not true. I just did my own thing. And I wanted to mention the fact that, and also thank Jerry Rappaport again, another major reason why we are all here today is that over 10 years ago, Jerry Rappaport came and basically beat up on the university, saying there is so much potential here. Jerry, who had spent time in the mayor's office and with Mayor Hines and others, was a big part of reforming Boston. Put together a group, put together this Rappaport Institute, which is a university-wide group based at the Kennedy School, whose explicit goal was to make happen, A, much more interesting interactions and research, B, bringing students that would come to and then enter into or return to Boston and the larger community in those activities, and C, to stimulate and serve as a convening authority. And so the fact that this collaboration with the Radcliffe Institute is, to me, a blossoming of the greatest dreams that I think Jerry and others have done. So I wanted to just ask a quick hand for Jerry Rappaport for all he's done to make all this possible. Now, what I've learned from Jerry and Ed and all the others is that the exciting things that are happening are, in fact, happening in cities. Cities don't have the luxury of saying, no, we won't pass anything unless we get our way. Because if you don't do anything, then the streets don't get plowed, the garbage doesn't get collected, the cities and their children don't get taught. And so at their best, our cities and towns do spectacular activity. And we also have learned that they are trying and looking and learning various ways to do a much better job of doing their services through everything from technology to the different kinds and styles of management. And finally, cities are a source of enormous innovation. It's partly because of the density of people creates the kind of automatic and inadvertent connections that are critical to those kinds of things and the like. And of course, universities are another incredible source of innovation. And one of the reasons why I think this is the perfect pairing between the Rappaport Institute that's worked so hard to build connections and the Radcliffe Institute, which has worked so much to bring connections across the university and disciplines and so forth, is that's where innovation comes from. That's where we can really make a difference. The real world, practical, everyday needs of the city and the cities more broadly, and the kind of interesting, provocative, innovative, and often quite data-intensive, rigorous kinds of work, when those come together and interact, they will clash at times, but from those clashes and those interactions, I think real greatness can appear. And so I just think this is a thrilling endeavor, and I really want to thank everyone that's involved, particularly Radcliffe Institute, but also, and certainly the organizers with Robert and Chris and all the others, David Lubroff, and the many others of you that are involved. So I just think this is the start of something terrific. I think all of Harvard will be better for it, but much more importantly, the Boston and the world can learn from it. So my thanks to all of you. I will just exit the stage and let actually people that know something say something. But the last thing, happy duty I have, is to introduce Peter Meade. Peter Meade is here, and he was appointed director of the Boston Redevelopment Authority in April 2011. This up here, as you see, this is a collaboration between Radcliffe and Boston and the Rappaport Institute. It seems to me that collaboration is about as important as it is. If it ever becomes only one of those, we will have failed. And so the city of Boston has been remarkably open and welcoming to the efforts in recent years when we have been thoughtful. They've also been very quick to tell us when we're not performing well, as is their appropriate role. And so the fact that Peter is here as the director of the Boston Redevelopment Authority is a particularly meaningful statement. And he was appointed in April 2011. Prior to that, he was the president and chief executive of the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate. He's been managing director of Rasky Barron Strategic Communications. It's a Boston and Washington strategic communications group, public relations group. He was executive vice president of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, president and CEO of New England Council. He's been a talk show host on WBZ, and he was chairman of the Rose Kennedy Greenway Conservancy and the chair of the Emerson College Board of Trustees. So he's finally got a real job. It's nice that he hasn't, he's finally found something he can really focus on. But with that, I want to thank you so much, Peter, for being with us, and thanks to Liz, and thanks to everyone else for putting on this important event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I love coming to panel discussions and symposiums at Harvard University. 23 years ago, I moderated a panel over on Church Street, and there I met the president of the Mass Teachers Association. And 15 years ago, I married her. And I was recently asked for a profile that somebody is doing the greatest accomplishment of my life, and I did say it was marrying Roseanne Bacon Meade. And so I thank Harvard for having hosted that symposium several years ago. As the director of the Boston Redevelopment Authority, my job is to be the Chief Economic Development Officer for the City of Boston. And I want to talk to you briefly about that, but first I want to tell you that, that Mayor Menino is excited about what is happening today, but he couldn't be here because he's accepting an award with two of the colleges in Boston for the kind of economic plan the city and these colleges did. One, my alma mater, Emerson College, where I served as chair of the Board of Trustees. And in Lower Washington Street in Boston, Emerson made a significant contribution, as did Suffolk University. Emerson moved from the Back Bay to what was known at one time as the Combat Zone. And for those who are young and don't remember what the Combat Zone was, it wasn't, some people made money in entertainment, but it wasn't a thing that anybody would be proud of. And so Emerson's move from the Back Bay to the downtown, which could not have been done without the cooperation and direction of the mayor, had made a significant difference, as did Suffolk University. Both schools, at the urging of the mayor and the city of Boston, brought two desperately, unbelievably ugly theaters back to a beautiful life. And so Suffolk University, Emerson College, and the mayor are accepting an award for the work that has been done to make a significant difference in the city. And it's just an example of where things can come together. I, too, believe that as you look at Washington for direction, you have this sense that you ought to pull up the covers and not get out of bed. But if you look to cities, you can see real hope for leadership and for cooperation. And I think some of it is directly to the point of if in a city you don't put the pieces together, the failure is instant and in your face. And so you need to understand about getting things done. And the city of Boston has done some interesting things. David Friedman, in his latest book, quotes a CEO who says that the problem for the United States is we have not done difficult, hard problems solving in this country. We haven't done anything as a country in a united way to solve difficult, hard problems. We haven't had projects like landing a man on the moon. And in cities, especially if you look at the city of Boston, we've done some very hard, difficult things together. Years ago, when Loeb came to Boston, there was a sense that you could really and needed to redo the city. And if you take a walk from the State House down to the harbor, a great deal has changed, done in cooperation. You have Government Center, Quincy Market and Faneuil Hall. The expressway came down, the Rose Kennedy Greenway was built. The harbor's been cleaned, there's a harbor walk. Now, not all of these things have been done perfectly, but they have been done. And they have been done with people working together. And what Mayor Menino does in the administration is he wants to make sure that people cooperate. And so today's an important day for us in the city as well. We will convene, there are 12 city departments who are represented here today. We'll convene all of the people from the city of Boston who participate in today's panel discussions and luncheon discussions. And so we'll bring them together back at City Hall to say, what did we learn? What did we not learn? What do we need to learn for the future? And where do we take this? So it's an important day for us as we look at this. Just a couple of notes on the city of Boston. The city of Boston is one of the few places in the country that's growing. As Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco lost population in the last census, we gained population. The city of Boston is over 600,000. We double every workday. We are the youngest city in the United States of America. 1 out of every 3 people who live in the city of Boston are in the age category from 20 to 34. We are an interesting place for businesses to come because we have a young, dynamic, well-educated population. That's driving a lot of the development that's going on in Boston. I want to talk about just 2 development projects. The Innovation District in the South Boston waterfront. It is amazing what is happening there, and the kind of innovation where the notion the mayor has is to bring as many people with intellectual power together and to watch what will be created. And he received a lot of criticism over the years because there could have been buildings, apartment buildings, condos, office towers built in the South Boston waterfront, but he insisted on the concept of the Innovation District. And so he was beaten up regularly in the paper, but he had a sense of vision of what it could be and what it could mean to the city. Right now, in the Innovation District, the largest privately financed construction project in the United States of America is happening in the South Boston waterfront. And we are no longer asking people to become pioneers and go to the Innovation District. You may have learned that Babson College is now, their latest campus extension is to the Innovation District to go with all of the companies that are there. One other place in terms of development in the city, Dudley Square, almost directly in the heart of the city. And with the city's leadership, and this is one of the places where the role of municipal government is interesting, and at the end of the story, we want to get to both public and private partnership in revitalizing at the very core of the city. The mayor and I are of an age that we remember Dudley Square as young people. I remember going there Saturday mornings with my dad, and it was a vibrant economic center. It is not at this point. But it's on its way back because of significant city investment. And it should be studied. There was an old police station built in the late 50s, early 60s. And frankly, it looked like Fort Apache, the Bronx. There's a new police station. The new police station that opened this summer was built on a brownfield site, probably the dirtiest site in the city of Boston. The new police station has received a LEED Silver certification. So you've gone on that one building alone from the dirtiest site in the city to something that is LEED certified. But the interesting thing is, as the police station was planned, the amount of community work that was involved in doing that. At the ribbon cutting, one of the people representing the neighborhood brought a plaque that read, "We come here as strangers, but we will leave as friends." Now, it's nothing I've ever thought of happening in a police station, but part of it was with the planning in the community, there are several community rooms for meetings, and there was a sense of ownership in the community about the police station. But it's just the beginning of what's going on. And by the way, something important to the mayor and to the city. 44% of the people who worked on the police station project were residents of the city of Boston. 40% were people of color. And one of the things that is important to this city, and is one of the things that Mayor Menino insists on, is that you don't walk by a project and look at people you don't know or don't look like you. In a majority-minority city, significant part of the population of those working on these buildings need to be people from the city of Boston. And that's a very important part of the economic development. The school department is going to Dudley Square. March 3rd, the mayor will break ground at the Ferdinand Building in Dudley Square, and it'll take a couple of years to redo the building, and it will be the center for the Boston Public Schools. There's a brand new, but very old, fire station in the heart of Dudley Square. And we cut a ribbon as the building was done over. It's an 1859 building at Dudley Square. We're working with the community on the Bartlett Yards just up the street where there's private investment. And if you look at the planning, parcels 9 and 10, we now have private individuals and companies looking at investing in Roxbury. And it's an interesting example of what happens with the city, as in this case, and not always, but taking the lead and making sure that something happens that's dynamic and helpful for the residents of the city. So there are examples of many things happening. And it is because we believe in the city of Boston, with the mayor's leadership, the cooperation of the business community, working with neighbors, that we can do difficult, hard projects and make this a much better city. Part of that are the colleges and universities and the intellectual power and, frankly, the criticism that they can bring to a dynamic, growing, vibrant city. So thank you for being here today. We in the city want to hear, listen, and learn from what you do today, and so we're very, very glad that you are here participating and working with us for the City of Boston. Have a great day.